Good morning. It is Monday, the 12th of July. I'm here with my good friend, Kristen Boice, once again for another edition of Mental Health Monday. Kristen, we're on a little bit of an off week here because of the holiday time with it being summer, but just honored to have you fresh off your grand marshaling duties from the Noblesville 4th of July parade. So congratulations on that. Thank you for serving in that. I know you reluctantly did that because you are a humble, kind, wonderful person, but I think you and I both know it was really symbolic of the overall mission around mental health that we are trying to promote. So thanks for serving in that, and happy Monday to you.
Thank you, Mayor Jenson. It was an honor and a privilege to elevate the conversation around mental health. So thank you for your vulnerability, authenticity, and jumping in to feel passionate about changing the conversation around this very important topic. So thank you. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I had a good time. I was like, I'm just going to spread the love, the love.
I'm actually wearing my Mental Health Matters bracelet here that the Boice girls gave out. So I appreciate it. I've been wearing that last couple of weeks as a great reminder. So thank you again. It was an awesome festival. I hope wherever you were watching from at home, you guys had a great 4th of July. You're having a great summer. We know people are vacationing in and out of things these days. I know a lot of people are watching these broadcasts on tape as well, which is awesome. So I'm excited to be with you here today. If you are listening live and have questions throughout this morning, let us know. We'll take them live. If we don't have the answers, we can get you answers later on as well. But it's a wonderful Monday here in Noblesville. I hope it's wonderful wherever you guys are too. We have an awesome topic this morning, very timely topic about communication and looking at different communication styles. I was talking to my wife this morning a little bit about how summertime is kind of a great time to be home with your friends and family, but that communication can get tricky. Communication in the summertime when everyone's at home is very different than communication when we're all on a schedule and routine and those things. So we're going to work through that a little bit this morning and talk about different communication styles. But before we do that, let's do some square breathing. And Kristen noted before we got on here, I do have a little bit of a head cold, so square breathing is going to be a little bit more tricky for me. But anyways, it's a great exercise. And Kristen, I'll let you lead us through that here before we get started.
Absolutely. If you need to breathe in through your mouth and out through your mouth, feel free to do that too, because sometimes that helps when we have a head cold.
Yep.
So first thing we're going to do, put your feet on the floor. We're grounding, we're centering, we're coming back into the present moment. So we're not in the future, we're not in the past, we're right here together. So first, press your feet into the floor. Then we're going to inhale for 4 through your nose, hold for 4, and slowly exhale out your mouth for 8. And we're going to do it together twice. And then I encourage you to do this every hour. So you're practicing this when things get intense, when you get anxious, when you feel overwhelmed. We're going to train your brain to the first thing to go to is the breath, to recenter to you, to ground you. So let's press into our feet. Inhale. Hold. Exhale. You want to try to go as long as you can on the exhale, almost like you're breathing through a straw, and noticing your body just let go and relax and release all that tension or tightness. So let's do one more together. Inhale. Exhale. Release and let go. Just kind of connect with your body, notice your nervous system and the felt sense, staying pressed into your feet for that centering and grounding. And this is a place to come back to throughout your day-to-day.
I love it. You know, I do this all the time. I tell people I do it in the car is my spot. So if you think about it, think about a time where, you know, you do on a routine. If you're in the car regularly, great time to do that. A lot of road rage out there. Square breathing is wonderful to do. I do it on State Road 32 every morning on my way into town. So we're going to tackle communication today. And I'm really excited about this. I've talked openly in the past about different communication styles that I prefer. I've talked a lot about how at home, Julie Jenson and I have very different communication styles. She is a write it out person. I am a in the moment, I want to fix it, let's talk about it person. So if we ever have an argument, I'll go at it. And then usually the next day I'll get a long email from her. Probably many husbands and wives nodding their head right now. They know exactly what I mean. You get a long email outlining what the issue was there. But it's just so different. And honestly, in this day and age, Kristen, there's so many communication ways and mechanisms that we have Actually, just as very timely this morning, I got lit up, and I will be very discreet about this, but I got a constituent concern via Twitter Messenger a few days ago. And to be honest, I didn't really even realize Twitter had a messaging service, so I didn't catch this Twitter message. And so I got another Twitter message this morning, mad at me for not responding to that Twitter message. So it was very timely in the fact that I didn't realize that was even a communication style or way to communicate. So it was very timely as I walked in here today about not only just the types of communication, but how we communicate with one another. It's just, there's a lot going on. So I would love for you to spend a few minutes talking about I think you outlined 4, I believe you're going to talk about. And then let's dive into each one and how we work through them and how we integrate different types into our every single day life.
Yes, and there's many platforms to communicate. Yep. My number one preference is face-to-face if you can, then video, then written or phone, texting, messengering, social media. I'm going to recommend a no-go. I recommend direct message. So that just out of the gate there, because sometimes they don't get the message. We don't get the message or we don't see the message. And then that can create different feelings inside of not feeling heard, seen, or understood. So let's narrow down these 4 styles. And these are the most well-researched styles of communication. And I invite you to check in with yourself and go, what style am I? How did I grow up? What was that style? What works best for me? And I'm going to tell you the most effective communication method. And we're going to go over that today. And I'm going to invite you to practice this in your relationships and breathe through the discomfort of maybe changing it up. Because whenever we change it up, our brains can go into fight, flight, or freeze, or fawn, because we're scared. We're scared of abandonment or rejection or judgment or not being liked. So let's go through the 4. The first one is submissive communication. I'll define all of these. Submissive is number 1. These are in no particular order. The second one is aggressive communication. The third, and the one I see the most, is passive aggressive communication. And the 4th is assertive communication. So let's break these down. So, because I know I'm going quick and we have limited time. So I want to hit the highlights of what these mean. So I wrote note cards so you can take notes. So for those of you that are like, you know what, I want to work on this. Awesome. Here's your note card. Number 1 is submissive. This is used as a 1 down position. So you think you're less than. It's rooted in shame of not feeling good enough, not feeling worthy, not feeling like you matter, and you don't have a voice. You feel powerless. This often comes from trauma, abuse, neglect. Because you didn't have a voice as a kid, you learn to not really communicate. So one of the examples is, I never can do anything right. That would be a submissive example of communicating that way. I never do anything right. Very shame-based. And oftentimes you'll see this within couples that one person doesn't feel like they have a voice and the other person may have an aggressive style of communication. So number 1 is submissive. So looking at your own patterns, your own family of origin, and seeing if this plays out. The next one is aggressive. This is where we often project blame and judgment and shame. So it's, you never are there for me. You always are yelling and screaming. We use the words you. We start with a you, and we have a never and always in the sentence. Typically, it's blaming, it's shaming, and what happens with the other person is we want to get defensive. We want to protect ourselves. So this elicits an aggressive response typically, or a defensive response. And this is lack of ownership. And people that have aggressive communication style typically have trouble taking responsibility for their part in the dynamic, their part in the communication. And you'll see this doesn't go well. Aggressive communication lands as shame and judgment. Okay, so now we have passive aggressive. This one is what I work with a ton with couples, because we don't say directly what we need or want, or even how we feel. We learn as children to not have a voice to please. And so we say it in a roundabout sort of way without being direct about what we're feeling. It's not clear. It can be perceived as aggressive. So a great example of this is when someone's, in the kitchen huffing and puffing, and they're like, who left these dishes in the sink? Well, we know darn well who left the dishes in the sink. We're just not really saying, I feel overwhelmed when the dishes are in the sink. Could you please put these away after each use? We huff and puff. It's kind of a little bit of martyrdom where we feel like we're doing everything and we feel like we're exhausted from trying to take care of everybody, but we're not really saying how we feel. So we huff and puff and we say, who left these dishes in the sink? I am sick and tired of cleaning up all the dishes. Nobody cleans up all the dishes around here. Passive aggressive. So that's a great example of what we would want to change. And we're going to get to assertive with a more direct statement. Okay, number 4, this is the bing, 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 winner, winner, winner. This is what I work with everybody on working on. And the first thing is we have to work on our own shame. If I don't believe I'm worthy, if I don't believe I'm lovable, if I don't believe I'm important, then chances are I'm not going to be direct and clear because that wasn't a pattern in my family dynamic. I have to learn how to love myself. I have to learn how to say things in a healthy way without projecting, blaming, and judging so I can actually be heard. So this brings us closer together. Submission, passive aggressive, and aggressive creates more distance in relationships. We actually want closeness. We actually want to be heard and known and seen. That actually creates the opposite of what we actually want. So assertiveness looks like, I feel sad because I really want to connect with you and spend time with you. Would you be willing to do a date night on Friday so we can go out, just the two of us? See how clear, specific, and direct. I used an I feel statement with a core emotion in there. And if you don't remember what the core emotions are, I wrote them out.
Yeah.
So here we go. I feel, you want to put a core emotion in there. I feel like you is what? Aggressive or passive aggressive, depending on what I'm saying. That's judgment. This is about me owning my feelings. So I feel sad because I want to spend time with you. Could we go together on Friday night and have a date night? Clear and direct, but I used a core emotion in there. So core emotions are sadness, fear, you could also say grief, anger, disgust, excitement, joy, and sexual excitement. And so we want to put a core emotion in that I feel statement. Otherwise, we're not taking responsibility for our own feelings. So it's really important you're using an I feel in there. We want to be direct without judgment or projecting our own stuff onto the other person. And the sender then can actually receive what you're saying a heck of a lot better than if you start with a you, always, or you never. Eliminate that from your vocabulary. It will not land and you will not create connection in the relationship. So we're going to take away a couple of things. Communicate in real time, if possible, what you're feeling. Again, I'm creating the structure. I feel sad with a core emotion in there because I need, make it a direct request. No more passive aggressive. That whole passive aggressive era is detrimental to healthy family systems and healthy relationships. It doesn't work. It lands as shame. And when we do this to our kids, like, why did you do that? See how my tone of voice and my face, that lands as shame. And shame says, I'm not good enough. I'm stupid. I'm an idiot. I am defective. I am unimportant. That's shame. We have to watch that we're not shaming through our communication. Assertiveness does not land as shame if we're clear and direct. Now, I can't control how the other person's going to take it. I can take responsibility for how I'm saying it. And what if we all took responsibility for how we're communicating? We would change the landscape in relationships. And the last thing is mirroring back what you hear someone say. So for example, if someone says, I feel really sad because I feel disconnected and I really want to connect with you. Could we go to have a date night on Friday? My response as the receiver could be, so what I hear you saying is you feel super sad because you really want to connect and don't feel connected and want to spend some time together on Friday night. And the person goes, yes. Now I have a felt sense of safety in my body that I feel heard and understood. It doesn't mean I agree. So I might feel really connected to my partner and they might not feel connected, and it's okay. The less defensive we are in communication, the better. But guess what? If I am in an aggressive communication, I'm going to get defensive. If someone's coming at me, I'm going to want to protect myself. Passive aggressive, I'm going to want to protect myself. Submissive means I don't even feel like I can protect myself. So I just kind of go into a one down position out of the gate because I don't feel worthy. I don't feel like I matter. So these are really important for you to identify. How do you communicate? You have to take responsibility for how you communicate. I can't control how someone else communicates. I can work on how I communicate. And when you boil it down to these 4 patterns, I guarantee you'll see yourself throughout the day in several of these, especially passive aggressive, submissive, and aggressive. Sometimes if we're in the car, we may get real aggressive. The person may not hear us, but we're getting aggressive. We have to look at what's underneath into those core emotions. You were going to say something.
Yeah. So if you're like me and you're watching, you might be like shrinking away a little bit as Kristen goes over these different communication styles. And you probably see yourself in some of those. You probably see your partner in some of those. You see your coworker in some of those. Can you talk a little bit about, obviously we're all trying to be assertive, but does assertive and aggressive at times tend to blend together, or how do I, can you boil down those two a little bit more and distinctions between the two of them?
Awesome. Yes. So aggression is one, we have to watch our tone of voice. Assertiveness, I can be clear and direct and very centered. Typically aggressive, I'm not centered. I'm pretty intense. There's an intensity about me. There is a tone about me. There's a facial expression about me. I almost come across as very angry. Where assertiveness, I'm centered, I'm calm. I've done my breathing before I've communicated. We typically don't have a pause button when we're in an aggressive state. We're a knee-jerk reaction because we're triggered. Triggers my trigger. And so then I take it out on, I misdirect it and misplace it potentially even on the other person. I haven't paused. I haven't regulated myself. I haven't come back to center. Assertiveness is I'm centered. I've done my self-regulation work. I'm clear on what I'm feeling and I'm ready to communicate. Aggression is typically very subconscious. We might have been communicated that way. And typically I'll say, who is aggressive with you? Who was shaming to you? Who said you are you this and you that and blamed and shamed you? Who did that to you? Who? Mom, dad, and they probably were done that was done to them too. So it's passed down among generations. Who did that to you is a big question. Who talked to you that way helps you go, oh my gosh, my dad did that. I don't want to become my dad. I don't want to become my mom. I don't want to become whoever that person was to you. Great. We can work on this. We can change that. But you have to be connected to your automatic responses. And aggression typically is an automatic knee-jerk response, where assertiveness is I've taken that time to do my deep breathing. I love that. And then I've gotten clear. I've kind of tried to quickly process and connect to what I'm feeling emotionally. And then I can come to it with an I feel statement. Typically aggression, you're not. There's going to be no I feel with an emotion in there. It's going to be a you. And it's not about the person taking any ownership or responsibility. So tone of voice, body language, facial expressions, and intensity are a way to check the difference between the two.
That's helpful. Thank you. So I want to dive in a little bit on passive aggressive communication, because you said it. So these are your words, not mine, that a lot of couples, this is what they deal with. And I'm sure there's a lot of husbands and wives kind of smirking right now when you hear this comment. Julie, Jenson, and I would probably openly both admit that we can be passive aggressive to one another within our relationship and throughout the day. How do we maybe talk to our partner or a coworker or whoever that may be that you're getting passive aggressive communication from, to try to at least maybe bring up this topic to just kind of point this out in a delicate way, and then also help transition to be more assertive with that person? How do we manage that relationship?
Well, this is awesome because my kids know these terms. So guess who's calling me being passive aggressive?
Yep.
My kids. Okay. So they'll say something like, I feel sad because I taught them to do the I feels. It doesn't always go this pretty, by the way. I feel sad because of how you're talking to me. Can you tell me directly what you mean instead of trying to kind of go around and tiptoe around it? It feels like you're being passive aggressive. Yes, I've taught my kids these terms. That can be another subject for a different time. So what I recommend is you say, I feel sad when you talk to me that way. And sometimes we have to set a boundary. Boundaries are what's okay with you and what's not okay with you. And it doesn't mean the person's going to like it. So I say, I feel really sad when you talk to me that way. It's not okay for you to yell at me. Something along those lines. And then they could get aggressive or defensive back. And I'll say, I will talk to you when we are in a calmer place. So we really are, boundaries are important with aggressive and even passive aggressive. We say with passive aggressive, to your point, when we say, I feel sad because, and we're being more direct with the person that's being passive aggressive. I feel sad because I really want to connect with you. And right now it feels like you're not connectable. And so because the person's in defense response, if we're in passive aggressive, submissive, or aggressive, we are in a defensive place. We're trying to self-protect from hurt, rejection, and abandonment. So it's almost like we have the armor on to start off with, instead of taking our deep breath and being more vulnerable and authentic and saying how we feel. If we have a lot of trauma, this feels very scary because we were shamed often, or there was a consequence for being authentic or vulnerable. So I want to make sure we're really highlighting that. And so when we take a breath, we come back to center. When I say, I feel sad because I really want to know how you feel, and I feel like you're not telling me directly. That's another way to handle it. And when my kids tell me that, I'm like, thank you for sharing. Is it hard for me to hear? Yes, because it brings up my shame. I'm a terrible parent. Oh my gosh, I've messed up my kids. I mean, the whole gamut of my shame story starts, and I have to take a deep breath. And I say, thank you for sharing. You're right. What was that like for you? What did you feel? I felt really sad because I'm confused. Like, why can't you just tell me what you really feel? And I'm like, yeah, I see how you're sad and confused. That makes sense. I'm going to work on that. So being able to take that feedback is important to healthy family systems and important and essential to healthy relationships.
Yeah, and I would imagine anyone would be willing to admit that hearing that feedback can be difficult. That's one of the biggest things I work through a lot, is hearing that criticism, hearing it, processing it, not deflecting it, listening to it, mirroring it back. That's, I imagine anyone in any leadership position, especially, you has to work through that quite a bit. So that's just part of it. And it's something that I'm personally on a journey to work on even more for myself. So you alluded earlier a little bit about the relationship between maybe how you were raised or and what kind of communication style was projected on you. I'm a parent of 4 small kids, so I've learned so much about how important my actions are as it relates to how my kids are going to grow up and develop as human beings. Can you touch a little bit on that? And if we want to try to work on being a better communicator, because we now see the importance of that in our children, you want to touch on that relationship a little bit?
Absolutely. Here's the number one thing I can tell people is you've got to do your own work. What does that mean exactly? It means you got to work on your insecurities, your shame of not feeling good enough, your fear of messing your kids up or doing something that's going to cause so much damage. And what I want to say to that is when you own your own contribution and your own issues and hold the space for them to tell you how they really feel, that's repair work. That's healing, because you're not going to do it perfect. There's no such thing. I mess up all the time because I'm human and I have my own stuff. And I'm clear when it's my stuff, even though I can feel those defenses wanting to kick in and be like, well, what about what you did? You didn't clean up the sink. And I can feel those defenses. And when I can go, okay, what's going on for you? Oop, your shame trigger got hit. You feeling not good enough. I have to own my own triggers. And this is hard because we want to protect ourselves, even with our children. And if we don't wake up and go, oh, I see how I communicated landed as shame for my kid. And what ends up happening is the child carries that shame around. Everybody's going to have shame, including our kids. We can teach them how to nurture themselves by me offering compassion and acknowledgement for how I communicated. So, oh, I can see how my tone of voice and my look on my face, you felt like I was really mad at you, and you felt like you did something bad, and tell me about how that feels for you. Ownership, taking responsibility, because that's what we wanted from our parents. That's what we wanted from our primary caregivers, for them to do their own work and not feel so insecure, to not feel so detrimental of like that shame driving their train. Because if it does, it gets projected onto the kids, and the kids end up trying to take care of their parent. They end up trying to make their parent feel enough. They end up trying to please their parent. They end up trying to love their parent so their parent feels like they're lovable. And it's a big burden that a lot of kids carry. And if we as adults, as parents say, you know what, I'm willing to go to the hard places to rumble through my own shame, my own unworthiness, my own fears, that's it. And taking responsibility for it. That is the key. And watching those defense responses that come from old places. Yeah. It's not easy. It's hard. And you're making it sound so easy. I'm walking the walk, and it's tough.
Yeah. Well, that's why, one of my goals here on this entire series of the last year and a half is to kind of own our stuff, right? And be open and honest about challenges that I have and communication styles that I certainly am a work in progress every day. As a mayor, as a father, as a husband, as a friend, you name it, as a son, whatever it may be, working through our communication styles, it's something that no one is perfect on. And you do such an eloquent job, Kristen Boice, and going through all four of them. But I'm sure behind you just admitted there yourself that you're a work in progress all the time. So I'm sure Mark would chime in there too at the same time. So
absolutely. So with my kids, they call me stuff all the time. Yeah. And I want that. I want to be called on my stuff. Yeah. It's not their job to call me, but I want them to have that ability to tell me. Yep. That's healthy. Yes. That is healthy. We didn't grow up like that. And I get that. That's a shift in mindset, but that's healthy. Then they go on to be able to speak their truth and say how they feel and have more empathy in their relationships with whoever they end up with.
Yep. I love that. Well, this topic, and we're almost out of time here, but we covered a lot in this half an hour, because that was very insightful to me, Kristen, about going over this. And I thought it was important to kind of go over it as we go through the summer months. A lot of families are using this kind of as a reset time, looking for a new school year coming up, spending time with our kids at home. A great time to think about this and how we're communicating within our own households, within our own businesses, as folks transition back to in-person work. Think about how you're communicating. Think about how you want to communicate, and take some of these lessons with you throughout the day. So before we leave, though, Chris, if you're in crisis right now, if someone's listening in crisis, needs help immediately, where do they turn?
1-800-273-TALK. This is the number one resource for anyone that's has suicidal ideation, or you just flat out are struggling to be here. Please call 1-800-273-TALK. There are so many resources out there. 741-741. If you don't want to talk to anybody, text. That's okay too. There is help available. You don't have to walk this alone. Prevail if you're having any verbal abuse, emotional abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse. This is the place to go. And they have a hotline, 317-776-3472. You can also go to the nearest emergency room, Community North here in Indianapolis, as well as St. Vincent Stress Center are here for you in Fairbanks if you're struggling with any addiction issues in Indianapolis. There's lots of resources. And then I know on the City of Noblesville Facebook or City of Noblesville website, there's a page with a whole list of resources available.
Yep, they're right at your fingertips. And I will also say, Kristen, you and I are involved in the Noblesville Wellbeing Coalition. We're getting ready to launch this week a community-wide survey that we're going to ask every resident to take a moment, focus on your overall well-being. Take a moment. It just takes a couple of minutes to fill that out. We want to get a sense of where our community is so we can continue to dive in and help those in need in around us. So, but in the meantime, thanks so much for listening. Kristen, thanks as always for joining us and giving of your time. It means so much.
Thank you so much, Mayor Jenson. Thank you, everybody, for just participating and changing this conversation around mental wellness.
Yes, and have a great week.